Howdy mates, good afternoon. How are we all doing? This is my first video for Friday, May 20th, 2022. And as part of today's adventure, I'm exploring a spot called the Pinnacle Mountain State Park. This is actually another site that I am revisiting after last year, too. So, as a bit of an introduction, the Pinnacle Mountain State Park is just a bit to the west of Arkansas's capital, which is Little Rock. Now, Pinnacle Mountain is so named for the mountain that I am actually making my way to the peak right now. We're almost there, but not quite yet. Pinnacle Mountain, from what I recall, stands about 800 to 900 feet tall, you know, from the bottom to the peak, of course. And it's basically the same type of bedrock that I've been discussing throughout the week, Hartshorn sandstone. Now, with that being said, this particular forest that is out here, this is considered to be a mixed hardwood forest. Now, for those of you who aren't really sure what that means, that's basically just another way of saying there's a combination of deciduous trees and evergreen trees, also known as conifers. So, just enjoy the view for a moment. You can actually see the Arkansas River from a distance, which is actually one of the largest rivers in the state. Yeah, just enjoy the view for a moment. But I figured while I was up here, I wanted to actually do a video on this particular conifer right here. As you can see, this is something actually called a... Shoot, the name of it just left off the top of my head. Give me just a second. Trying to... Yes, that's right. Shortleaf pine. I had to like think about that for a second while I was filming. Okay, yeah, shortleaf pine. The reason I know that is for a couple of different reasons. Conifers are usually quite tricky to identify sometimes. The shortleaf pine actually looks very similar to the red pine. But as I said, I'm going to actually mention a couple of differences to look for. Alright. So we're going to the bark first. So shortleaf pine has, you know, a little bit of red, as you can see, in the inside right here, and the bark. Now, with that being said, red pine is very similar. But here's a difference. With shortleaf pine, typically the furrows that you see right here, like in between each plate, they typically go deeper into the bark. Whereas a red pine, on the other hand, it looks a little more scale-like and more diamond-shaped. Whereas this one is just irregularly shaped, if you know what I'm saying. So that's a piece on the bark. So now, moving on, we're actually going to move on towards the needles and even the cones themselves. So, as many of you well know, conifers don't produce leaves. Rather, they produce needles. And typically these needles can stay on an evergreen for 3 to 4 years. Hence why they are called evergreen. Since, you know, they don't shed like deciduous trees do annually. But I'm going to pull off a piece right here. So conifers have something called a fascicle. It basically refers to a bundle of needles. A common characteristic of shortleaf pine is there's usually only 2 needles per fascicle. Whereas a red pine, on the other hand, usually has 2 or 3. And another difference with shortleaf pine, it's really in the name. Like this, these needles are probably only 2 inches long, whereas a red pine, it may only reach 3 to 4 inches. So that's another thing to look for, is also the difference in length and how many needles are in each fascicle. Okay, so we got that piece. Bear with me just a second. Alright. I pulled myself a cone that belongs to this shortleaf pine. Now, the cones between both pines are actually very similar. I just wish I had like a comparison, so you kind of have to take it by verbatim. But a shortleaf pine's cone is typically only 2 or 3 inches in height, and same goes for a red pine. However, each little bundle that belongs to this cone, like right here, like right where I'm touching, there's like a little bit of a needle right there. Like you press it in and you can feel that little prick. But unlike a red pine, they don't have those needles that are in each bundle. So that's another way to distinguish. But yeah, conifers in general are a great example of gymnosperms, which basically means their seeds are naked, such as this cone. There's no protection of it. Whereas like an angiosperm, which is what we're also very familiar with, usually the seed is protected by the ovary or the fruit. You know, like a great example are apple trees. Those are angiosperms. But typically the method of pollination is quite different too. Usually with gymnosperms, the pollen just simply drops from a male cone to a female cone, and thus it will eventually begin the process all over again. But that is really a difference between our common deciduous trees and our conifers, right? A lot of the terms that I'm using usually mean the same thing. That's really the bottom line. It's alright, you guys. I hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope you guys have a great upcoming weekend. And once again, Journey on a Journey is outwards. Take care, folks. See ya.